All righty, let's get this show on the road, folks. We are today running a webinar with Jerry Pharr from Sales Excellence Advisors. He is a phenomenally talented enablement professional. He's changed my mind about enablement more times than I can count, and currently practices with Sales Excellence Advisors, pardon me. And he's going to be talking with Noah Zandan, CEO and co-founder of Quantified.ai, about can enablement deliver results that executives actually care about and believe? And I'm looking very much forward to this conversation. I'd like right now to welcome Jerry and Noah. Gentlemen, welcome.
What's up?
Great to see you both. So I just want to kick off and sort of get right into it, if you don't mind. Jerry, you've built a long career in enablement, as we know. And Noah, at Quantified, of course, you sell into enablement and speak with a lot of enablement professionals. So from each of you, I'm curious to know, I see, and Noah, we even saw this on your social post earlier today, this is a time of huge change for enablement professionals. What do each of you see as the big challenges right now facing enablement professionals? Jerry, do you want to jump in with your point of view on that?
Sure. I've been doing this kind of work for almost 10 years now. And before that, I was a seller for 6 years. So I've been in sales for about 15 years. And I've come to believe, especially in the last couple of years, that everyone knows the macroeconomic has changed dramatically. It used to be growth at all costs, and money was really cheap. So let's just spend higher, and don't worry too much about the impact of that. That's different now, and businesses have this directive. They have to be find profitability somehow. I know that's crazy to think about, but profitability is important. And those decisions are not those that impact does not just impact the executives. It finds its way down to every different function in a company, including enablement. And so in these kind of economic headwinds, enablement orgs have to change. They have to find a way to deliver value to the business in a way that executives care about and believe. And I think too many enablement orgs don't do that, or at least don't do it really well. And so I'm on a very caffeinated mission to help enablement orgs kind of surmount these trying times.
And Jerry, just to drill down on one thing you said there that is kind of interesting, in addition to caffeination, which is obviously a passion you and I share, there's at the heart of what you're talking about, it sounds like it's credibility. Yes, macroeconomic change. Yes, technological change. But would you go so far as to say that enablement is facing perhaps a bit of a crisis of credibility?
No doubt about it. I mean, you ask any enablement leader who's been out there for more than a couple of years, they'll tell you that writ large, the enablement function has lost reputation. It's diminished reputation over the last several years. And there are a lot of reasons for that, economic climate, among others. And I feel pretty strongly that unless enablement leaders do something to change that and to earn the right to be at the table and earn the right to kind of make claims that they are improving the business, they're in big trouble.
Intriguing. Noah, does that jive with what you see as you talk with enablement leaders?
It does. And you want to ask Jerry, what are those things that enablement needs to do? And I know you're going to do that in a minute here, Russ. It does, right? I mean, I think that, the trends we are seeing, and we talk about, Jerry spoke about the diminishing credibility of enablement orgs. He talked about the macroeconomic efficiencies. I think the other one that you probably implied, Jerry, but didn't explicitly mention is like reporting, right? And we're seeing, the oncoming rev ops, the oncoming sales leadership really wanting to demonstrate efficiency and prove value, and sort of the reporting around enablement and the kind of sales ops world is an evolving thing that we are seeing in the market. Does enablement report to the C-suite? Do they report to sales leadership, or do they report to rev ops? Is another trend that we're really seeing and discussing with quite a few of our customers, especially as we try to help enablement folks prove their value.
Knowing that, you mentioned the reporting question, Noah. Does it report into sales? Does it report into RevOps? Do either of you have a perspective on where it should report and why?
I do. So, and this won't surprise anybody, but the closer to power that the enablement org lives, the better it can serve the company, the better it can drive business. If you're reporting directly into the head of sales, that is your primary customer in most cases. As long as that head of sales also, depending on your purview, sometimes you also serve customer success and others, but whatever the leaders are, of the reps you serve, that is ideally the place you report into. What I found is that in smaller companies, in startups, that's almost always the case. And you hire the first enablement person, you're usually going to report into the VP of sales, maybe the CRO, that kind of thing. When the sales orgs kind of mature and get larger, and I roughly place it around like 800 employees-ish is when you start to see the transition to enablement reporting into RevOps. And I think that is largely because they're just trying to, the head of sales has too many direct reports, and it feels like, well, let's just put that somewhere. RevOps is fine. And the downside to that, well, not only is it that you're further away from power and you're getting sort of different priorities, but I've talked to 30 different RevOps leaders just in the last 6 months. And none of them have any background in enablement. And very few have any kind of meaningful thoughts and opinions on enablement. I participate in a ton of RevOps communities, online and in real life. Guess how often they talk about enablement or even rep performance?
Maybe
Never.
when they ask you, Jerry, what do you do? And you say enablement, and that's as far as it goes?
Yeah, they don't talk about it. So that to me is a sort of telling of where the priorities lie within RevOps.
That makes sense. Again, Noah, do you see it that way as well, or do you see it differently?
So I definitely agree that it's contentious, right? I mean, I think that it is a contentious issue and a hot button issue as we speak to people. What I would say, Russ and Jerry, is like I'll lean on the data, right? And if I look at the sales enablement collectives data, about a third of enablement folks report into sales. So which means, 65% don't. And that split between reporting into RevOps or reporting into the C-suite. And I think this kind of gets to where we're likely going, and in the conversation with Jerry, which is, how can enablement prove and demonstrate their value? What is believable to the sales leadership and the C-suite? The one thing you said, Jerry, that I'd love to ask about is you said that RevOps doesn't care about rep performance, and that felt a little surprising to me. So I was wondering if you could unpack that.
Well, I won't claim that they don't care about it. What I claim is they don't talk about it in their RevOps communities.
Got it.
That's all I know. And I'm in those communities a lot, and I never hear conversations about those. I hear conversations about tools, about reporting, about comp plans, about lots of things, but never about what are the performance gaps that we need to work on.
Interesting. Yeah, that I can see that in that when I consider the RevOps people that I hang out with, sometimes they are very tool and almost plumbing focused sometimes, as opposed to where a good sales leader is very people and human focused.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this, Noah, you mentioned, making decisions based on the data, which is, of course, I know that you're wired that way, but I'm curious to know from you both, how do you measure the impact of enablement? Because Jerry, you've talked a lot about fundamentally people often measure the wrong thing, either too high or too low. So I'd love you to walk through your framework on that if you'd be willing to.
Sure. And this is based on, like, I have the battle scars that have helped me form this opinion because I've done it wrong a lot of times. When I first started enablement, I did what most people do in enablement is you do an initiative, you do a training, and you do the surveys and you give a quiz, and you say, hey, did you like this? That kind of thing. So you're measuring butts in seats. You're measuring percent of people who passed the quiz, percent of people who liked it and said it was awesome. And those are important metrics because they help you as an enablement person figure out how to be better at your craft. But if those are the results that you're sharing with your executives, trust me when I say they don't care about it. They don't care a ton about those kind of, if you look at this image on screen here, this is, most of you will recognize this kind of Kirkpatrick model measuring learning. So you'll get there at the very bottom, there sort of the reaction. What did they think about it? And learning, did they kind of pass the quiz? Did they demonstrate that they learned the stuff? And at the very top, you get sort of the ROI business results. So I've already said that the bottom things, sales leaders generally don't care a lot about that. Now they care, they'll give you some kudos, hey, good job, that kind of thing. But it's not like they're ever going to go talk to in their executive leadership team. They're not going to go talk about those awesome results from those surveys of how the percent of people who like the training. So if you look at the very top, there are a lot of enablement leaders who, if they try to get very sophisticated, they'll say, well, let's focus on those business outcomes that the business does care about, the win rates, attainment, ARR, sales cycle length, those kinds of things. And those are super important. But after many years trying to make the case to my CROs that our enablement initiatives were awesome and we helped improve win rates by 23%. You get a lot of eye rolling because they frankly just don't believe you. It's hard for them to believe that your efforts, your team's efforts, were a significant contributor to that. Now I have to acknowledge, so I have a good friend, Mike Kunkel, who's a super smart in enablement, been doing this work for a long time. And he has this phrase where he says, when you're trying to measure attribution on outcomes, so there were some outcomes over here, and to whom do you attribute those outcomes? He says that those are all a lie that we all agree to. And I like that. I think that's right, because if you're trying to say, hey, it was thanks to this thing that caused it, we're not doing these scientific trials where you can prove it like with scientific credence that it's true, but you have to at least make some assumptions. And so there are some orgs that are doing those executive conversations to align on those, I'm putting in air quotes here, on those lies that we all agree to, on who's attributable, to whom you can attribute these results. But in most cases, that doesn't happen. So when that doesn't happen, you try to claim that you improve win rates, they just simply don't believe you. So I got sort of too tired of talking about things they don't care about or talking about things they don't believe. So I've been focused on that middle ground. And in Kirkpatrick, he calls it, application implementation. I call it behavior change. Our reps actually doing things to demonstrate they've learned. And, that's oftentimes just in real life conversations, measuring, did they change how they talk with prospects and customers? Did they change what they say in emails with prospects and customers? But it also involves practice. Are they actually, practicing and iterating on the things they've learned to sort of apply that learning? So that middle ground, I believe, is sort of the sweet spot for enablement because you have a solid claim that you influenced and affected that. And it's stuff that most sales leaders do care about. They care about reps improving their discovery calls, improving their proposal presentations, those kinds of things. So I've been talking a lot. I'll shut up.
But the intent, I just want to expand on that for a minute to make sure I understand, Jerry, is, at the top is definitely something we all care about. Are we generating ROI? Are we closing deals, et cetera? Mm-hmm. As I heard you say, at the core is many things influence that, not just the enablement work. So I want to know what conversations you have with the sales leader to get that alignment, that if everybody spends 5 more minutes on a call and does it this way in Salesforce rather than the other way, and adheres to the prescribed messaging, we agree that we think that will influence ROI. How do you approach those conversations? I generally say,
Mr. and Mrs. Head of Sales, we're about to do this one initiative on XYZ, discovery, whatever it is. I'm not going to tell you that one thing is going to move the needle on win rates. But I am going to say that I am going to be able to move the needle on specific behaviors related to discovery, related to multi-threading, whatever the initiative is. We're going to do a bunch of initiatives over time, month over month, quarter over quarter. We're going to be doing a bunch of initiatives. And each time I'm going to be showing how we move the needle on reps getting better at certain things. Eventually, I think you'll start to believe me when I say that you add all these initiatives together and collectively they contribute to improving win rates, attainment, ARR. So it's the sort of cumulative effect of a bunch of initiatives and not just one. Now, that's not the only argument you can make. You could certainly go in and try really hard to get alignment on, for this particular initiative, let's agree, all of us, that if we do these things, we're going to agree on, win rates and win rates. You can. I've chosen not to. I've chosen to do a more cumulative approach.
Interesting. And I do love the eventually, I think you'll come to believe me, highlighting that it's a process. Noah, I know that you've worked with, many enablement teams with Quantified, and a core value proposition of what Quantified does is helping reps practice so they can get better at those behaviors, such as being certified, staying on message, etc. I'm curious to know how you approach those conversations with a customer to say, I believe we can change behavior through practice, and I believe this will generate ROI for you.
Yeah, not surprisingly, I love what Jerry's talking about, right? I love this pyramid because it creates a level of dual accountability, which I think is really important, right? The enablement folks have to promise what they can do and can deliver, but they don't overpromise. But it also forces alignment with sales leadership about, here's what we can do and here's what we will do. Where we come into it, Russ, is I have a deep perspective and point of view that reaction and learning are not enough. For Jerry to do a phenomenal job as an enablement leader, people's happiness with the work is not enough, and oftentimes learning can be very short-term pulses. It's an immediate survey after the learning workshop, which doesn't see behavioral pull-through. And so by getting to that third level of this pyramid, it requires a different exercise and really a different strategic approach to changing behavior. And in order to do that, as all of the research would say, you've got to do spaced repetition, you've got to do ongoing reinforcement, you've got to do all these things that I'm, as an athlete, have learned that if I want to improve my performance on the field, or for my purpose in the pool, I was a swimmer. I can't just jump in once and have a great swim. I could have the best swim ever on a Tuesday, but that's not going to change my performance. I've got to get in and practice. And just a big believer that in order to achieve these results, which I agree with that Jerry's talking about, a fundamentally different approach to learning and training and changing behavior is needed.
That makes sense. And, you and I have used the phrase before that reps need reps. Improvement comes from practice, right?
Did you say reps need reps?
Reps need reps. Reps need repetition.
I like that.
Thank you. So curious to know, though, this is going to require, if you're going to change behavior and measure behavior change, it's going to require tools. What sort of, and this is where, again, the perspective of RevOps versus sales leadership, like it or not, in enablement, you're probably going to be a bridge there and be working with both constituencies. Yeah. Curious to know what sort of tools you find helpful in measuring behavior change and proving potentially that, hey, just maybe this behavior change I helped create contributed to closing this big deal.
Totally. Well, first I have to acknowledge that it is not easy to get the buy-in from other people outside of enablement to build the infrastructure for that ongoing support and reinforcement and repetition that Noah was talking about. Most people on this webinar and watching us would acknowledge that training by itself doesn't change behavior. You can be the best trainer in the world. It's not going to change behavior. Maybe in some minuscule amount it can, but generally you need spaced repetition. You need coaching. You need reinforcement. You need practice. You need lots of things over time for that new behavior to become a habit. You're in essence, you're trying to encourage habit formation. Mm-hmm. That thing happens over time. And by the way, what's that book I love?
Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg.
No, something habits. Micro habits.
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. Yes, love that book. Any case, so you need that thing, but it's rare that enablement has sort of the wherewithal to oversee that. You need the buy-in from a frontline manager. You need the buy-in from RevOps. You need lots of help and support in reinforcing that and measuring it. So once you get that buy-in, let's ensure that managers are going to have conversations with their reps about this initiative on discovery, on multi-threading, on whatever that kind of thing is. You're going to have those conversations in their one-on-ones. You get buy-in that they're going to require their reps to do some practice, do some role plays, all those sorts of things. Once you get that buy-in, then you can start to measure the degree to which they're doing this. And my preference is to do it measuring the actual interactions with prospects and customers. And I don't like to rely on self-reported surveys from managers. I think that's not very reliable. But you can measure the percent of calls where at the end of the call, they ask for a next step and they recommend that you invite someone else to the next call. Those sorts of behaviors you can listen for and measure using most conversation intelligence tools these days. So as long as you do have tooling like that, technologies that allow you to, capture and analyze conversations and emails, it's not crazy difficult to do the measuring. You can see the percent of people who said these kinds of things in a call, the percent of times, or the average number of people on the customer side throughout a sales cycle who actually spoke on a call. Not the number of people who were there, but the number of people who spoke during a conversation. Those are things you can sort of measure. So I think you have to have conversation intelligence. I think you have to have a way that is logging emails of some sort, whether it's an outreach or sales loft or some mechanism to log emails. You got to do those. Then you have to have sort of the reporting mechanism to visualize the data. In a lot of companies, it's a CRM, but admittedly, there's some lots of limitations there. You can find some other mechanisms to visualize the data. But then, just doing it in real life with prospects and customers isn't the only thing to form habits. You've got to actually do the practice and doing role play. So that's where Quantified comes in. It's kind of, allowing you to practice the things you learn so that you can apply them in real life interactions with prospects and customers. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I like what Jerry's saying. What I would build on is, we talk to sales managers as much as we talk to sales enablement folks, and they've got a lot on their plate. Their span of control, the efficiencies that are required, they've got a lot to deal with. And so I like what you're saying, Jerry, but one of the challenges I would push back against is you're putting a lot of responsibility on the managers to inspect. And, one great sales trainer said to me, people respect what you inspect. Mm-hmm. And, less than 1% of those conversation intelligence calls are ever listened to. And so we've got a great recording library, and hopefully, as you said, we are running intelligent analytics on top of that material. That requires, a level of sophistication, which is achievable. But, where we see a lot of this system you're talking about breaking, in addition to the success metrics, which I love that you're talking about, is a lot of onus is put on the manager, and a lot of expectations are put on sort of this all this work and practice and training and behavioral pull through being done. But there's not actually a ton of visibility on it. And that's where, for enablement folks, I believe we can help them show the value of their work by showing the visibility of it, saying, look at all this training that was delivered. Look at all this practice that occurred. Look at all these coaching interactions that happened. And that elevates the value in the field of enablement. And I believe that software can be a wonderful friend to do that, because oftentimes, there is sort of a question from the top of enablement is important because we need to get people using our new message. Yeah. But then the gap between what the sales leader says, something like that, and the gap between what enablement actually does, and then, as you said, the value that comes back up, that's where we see a pretty big gap in the market and the need.
Totally. And in fact, I'm glad you said that about the kind of call coaching thing. I started being a fan of conversation intelligence tools like 9 years ago. I've been a customer all along. I'm a friend of the founders of several of them, so I kind of love the technology. So many times over the years, I've tried to implement call coaching programs. Like internally, I was an internal enablement leader, and I did it like 5 times. Every single time it failed. It never lasted more than a month with never more than a few managers doing it a few times. And I think because it is a huge burden on the manager to do here. During this time slot on your calendar, talk to this particular rep about this particular call and listen to it during that call and provide feedback on it. There's no doubt that that sort of activity can be valuable and it's a good sort of coaching thing, but it doesn't scale. And it's really freaking hard. Like,
It's also, I don't mean to interrupt you, Jerry, but
yeah.
a great enablement leader at LinkedIn told me it's such an awkward interaction, right? You're asking these managers who are really promoted to manager because they're great sellers to all of a sudden become coaches and feedback folks and, hold the hand of the next generation of reps. That's not their natural strength. Their natural strength is sales. And, sometimes some of them can be great coaches and feedback folks and guidance, but it's really out of their skill set and it's a strain.
Yeah, no doubt. I've tried to implement manager coaching programs several times. It's super hard. It just feels really big and scary to managers. It is a huge, huge lift that I haven't seen done very well, except in huge enterprises. If you're like an Oracle or an SAP, almost guaranteed you have that sort of thing. But pretty much anywhere else, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's actually, I'm going to cut straight to a question here from the audience because it dovetails so nicely with the direction the two of you are going with this. He's asking fundamentally, I think it's not just practice, it's got to be good practice. Practicing bad habits doesn't help. I'd love to know more about how you see AI potentially helping with good habits.
No, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, the AI is not the silver lining, the answer to everything, the sort of the savior here. But what it can do is it can create, consistent practice situations that are high quality and valuable. And when we observe a lot of human to human role play, which we, of course do, and it's part of the fundamental research we did to build Quantified, most of the time managers are extremely nice role play partners. They let the rep go in whatever direction they want, and they let the rep when a real customer or prospect would typically cut you off and be like, Noah, you are not prepared for this conversation. Doesn't sound like we're a fit. Thank you. Managers are often much more permissive and kind. And so the cool thing about AI, and I get to remind people of this almost every day, is it doesn't care about your emotions. And you can program it to be whatever personality you would want. So you want to practice selling to someone who is rude and impatient and doesn't have time, or who is demanding. You can create those situations. And the reason I'm taking us there is because in a real selling environment, there's a degree of pressure. And AI can replicate that pressure when you build good sales simulations, conversational sales experiences. You can replicate some of the pressure of selling, which is where you get really high quality practice and actually can see the behavioral pull through, as opposed to a friendly, informal chat with your manager.
That what's interesting about that is tying it back, Jerry, to what you said a moment ago about when you start to coach managers, those programs can become, very scary. This is a frightening area because it's not something these people have, necessarily been trained to do throughout their career. And it's actually a really hard thing to do, to give people honest feedback that helps them grow, but is actually, accurate. So it's interesting that those two things kind of dovetail, the ability to give that true, honest feedback and the discomfort many humans have, in that role doing that. What does, just hypothetically, let's just snap our fingers, wave a magic wand, whatever metaphor we want, and imagine we are now in the future and we have AI to do all of that for us and understand and, analyze and provide that feedback and coaching. What role then does the human sales leader have in that picture?
It's a great question. I think it is not about individual calls and probably not even about individual deals, but about broader skills that we see repeated call after call, deal after deal, that if I see a trend line of you consistently not uncovering the cost of inaction, you only uncover kind of surface level pains and challenges. You don't ever uncover the cost of inaction. You probably have low win rate because of that. But I would need AI to uncover that in this call, and this call, and this call, and this deal. But if I, as a manager, can see that as a skill performance competency gap that Russ has, then I think that's a perfect place for a manager to come in and have a conversation around. Hey, I'm noticing this trend in a bunch of calls. We can listen to a few snips here and there, but I'm not seeing you uncover the cost of inaction. Let's talk about that. What are you seeing? I think that's a great thing for a manager to have.
That ties to the old saying, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And, I'm actually going to flip what Noah said a moment ago about the great thing about AI is that it doesn't care and it will give it to you straight. And the great thing about human leaders and managers is that they do care. And that's where I potentially see the two together as being very, very powerful as we get each focused on its strength.
Yeah,
And managers are part-time psychologists. AI cannot be your part-time psychologist. You've got to have some emotional intelligence when having those conversations. And I don't know that AI can do that just yet anyway.
Completely
yeah,
fair.
Russ, I love your question, and the one word answer is relationships, right? I mean, there's plenty of software that I buy that they sort of programmatically will not let me talk to a human, and it is the most frustrating experience to try to buy something from a bot or an AI. It's just not there yet, right? And you just want to have I just want a 2-minute conversation with a human that actually can care about what I care about, and can help me. And that will evolve. The bots will get smarter, and we'll probably be able to sell me plenty of software. But there's still a level of relationship building that I want, and I believe that matters for sales leaders both internally with their teams and their talent, as well as externally with their customers and their prospects.
Yeah.
Very cool. So with all of this change going on, we have new people coming into the field of enablement, and one of those new people might grab either of you for coffee to pick your brain and say, I'm starting a new role. It's my first job in enablement. What should I know? What should I focus on? So I'd love from each of you to know that hypothetical new enablement person comes to you for that guidance. What guidance are you going to give them over coffee?
Well, my answer is similar to the first thing I teach brand new sales reps. So for brand new sales reps, I teach them about buyers. You've got to understand the people who are buying from us, the people you're going to have conversations with. Understand your customer, so to speak. For enablement, their customer is sales reps, sales managers. Understand those very deeply. Shadow reps, shadow managers, understand what their daily lives are like, what their routines are, what their click paths are, what are the things they're saying, typing, and clicking on their computers throughout their day. What are the challenges? How are they incentivized? What are the elements of their comp plan? Because that influences behavior. Deeply understand those the sales reps. And that will dramatically improve your ability to deliver value to those reps and to those managers.
Makes sense. Noah, how about you? Same person hits you up and says, Noah, I'll buy you coffee, but I need your thoughts. What are you going to tell them?
Yeah, there's a concept of an enablement charter, which I think is a pretty cool concept from my perspective. About, call it 50% of enablement folks have a charter, right? And that's basically an agreement with whoever they report to, likely sales leadership, about the role and the value of enablement. And I think that for new folks coming into the field, understanding what success looks like, whenever we hire someone across our entire team at Quantified, in the job description, we write, if you are wildly successful in this role, in 1 year, you will have blank. And we, ideally list 3 to 4 bullets of things that someone would achieve. And just, for new folks in an evolving field, is all the trends that Jerry spoke about at the beginning of this call, which I think are spot on. Alignment with whoever you report to. And ideally that could be a dual alignment with leadership, certainly if you report to someone in operations. is just an incredibly important thing to establish up front for, an organization that's obviously under some pressure right now.
And you're going to have a bunch of new hires come in from different parts of the org, different sales leaders, different marketing leaders, different product leaders. When those new leaders start, you will need to go have a conversation with them to introduce yourself and your org. The charter is a good way to have that conversation.
I like it. It sets a framework, which makes everything else, places a context around everything else.
Yep.
So there's a couple questions, if you guys don't mind, that I want to go to
Sure.
from the audience. First one, and I think this is going back to the pyramid graphic, Jerry, in terms of the question is specifically, how are you measuring the sweet spot? And at least the way I'm reading that question is the sweet spot is behavior change, and we know how to measure closed deals, and we know how to measure, did people show up for the training and did they like the training? But the middle can seem a little fuzzy. So just what's your crispest way of measuring, are you having an impact there?
So if we set aside the business outcomes, the win rates and that kind of thing, I kind of have two categories of middle ground. The first is real life interactions with prospects and customers. What things you're saying on calls, things you're typing in emails. And also, I guess in there is things you're typing in fields in your CRM. Because sometimes you do have to, like, your behavior is, I have to fill out this field. So those are the kind of, the behavior type things. And at least the calls and emails, it does require technology to monitor those things. And it has to be sort of initiative specific. It has to be specific. I'm focusing on new discovery call framework. And here are the 4 specific behaviors we're focusing on. And we're going to measure, do they give an agenda at the beginning? Do they uncover a cost of inaction? Do they recommend a next step? Do they invite another persona to the next call? I'm just throwing out 4 random examples, things you can actually measure the degree to which that happens in calls. So middle category 1. Middle category 2 is there's sort of there are indicators, but not like business indicators, sort of like intermediate indicators. Like there is stage to stage conversion rates, from discovery to demo, whatever the different stages are. What are those conversion rates? What is the average discount rate on opportunities? How many times does your close date in the opportunity advance? How many times are you pushing it out? Those sorts of things. I think those, they're not true business outcomes, but they are consequences of the behavior stuff, consequences of the calls and emails, that kind of stuff. So those are kind of the 2 categories of things, the behavior things and the middle ground indicator things.
Makes sense. Noah, anything to add on that?
No, observability is a difficult thing, right? And obviously there's tools and technologies to do that. We do at Quantified, we also work with a variety of customers in regulated industries where you cannot record things and you cannot have, email capture. And so those create unique challenges, and, you have to get a little more sophisticated about what you do in the training workflows to, sort of prove behavior. If you're not, in an industry like healthcare or financial services where things cannot be recorded live and you don't have that observability layer. So, just extending on what Jerry said in that direction as well.
My value prop is not very valuable in those industries.
Or there may be different ways to approach some, which I think is a piece of what we're working on, which actually leads to another quick question where somebody's asking, are you seeing AI come in and fill that coaching gap? Obviously, a piece of that is what we're building at Quantified, but curious to hear from you both your perspective on how effectively AI is filling that coaching gap today, and perhaps how effectively it might be filling it in a year or 2.
Well, as Noah was speaking earlier about this, something sort of crystallized in my head, like 2 sort of differentiators that I see AI has over humans doing the coaching. First is accurately measuring application of best practice. Because you can teach the AI what it sounds like to listen, to uncover cost of inaction, to request next steps, to invite other personas the next day. You can train it to do that. So it will more accurately and reliably capture whether reps are doing that or not doing that kind of thing. Managers are humans, so they would miss those sorts of things. So I think that's an advantage for AI, as long as it's trained properly on what that best practice is and what it looks like and sounds like. The next is the feedback, because they, like you were saying earlier, it's mostly objective, doesn't really care about the feelings. So it's going to give you sort of the candid, unvarnished feedback that is often valuable. Now, as we also said, there is value in having the more emotionally sensitive feedback as well, which I think with the humans can come in. But I think the accuracy and reliability of measuring the best practice and giving sort of reliable feedback on it is a differentiator for AI.
Yeah, I like what Jerry's talking about, Russ, with kind of like a few shot approach to setting examples of what good looks like and allowing the AI to uncover those. Sort of take one step back and answer your question, can AI fill the coaching gap? Right now, AI is really good at the knowledge gap, right? It is really good at surfacing the right information and amassing the knowledge across organizations or across the whole large, the large world of information online, and bringing that knowledge to our fingertips. It's really good at making a rep in the 60th percentile have the information of a rep in the 80th percentile. Can it do coaching? It's starting to, right? I mean, it's starting to say, this is the right material, this is the right comment, this is the right message to use. Can it do the sort of emotional and motivational part of coaching? Not yet. Some people, that's really to coaching. That's what a lot of people want, and that is, gonna remain the role of a human for a very long time. But can AI be the equalizer of knowledge and information and feedback across an organization? I believe it can. And we as a company are very focused on building and training AI to do that. The one part that I'd probably break that answer up to is there's a really big difference between live call coaching and post-call coaching. And I think that we're seeing a lot of companies try to do a lot of interventions live with reps. And I actually think that's a pretty big mistake. The cognitive load when you are selling doesn't make you open to a ton of feedback and guidance on what to do while you are engaged in a conversation with somebody. And people's willingness to learn and coach and get feedback is dramatically higher before a call or right after a call. And outside of the selling loop, I think is the best opportunity for coaching, not in the midst of a conversation with a prospect or a customer.
No, I have a question for you. How long do you think it will be before AI is smart enough to know that Russ has been consistently not great at uncovering cost of inaction, but there's something else going on with Russ so that I, as a human, would know now's not a good time to bring that up with Russ?
Yeah, so you're asking about sort of his cognitive load, right? I mean,
it's more about the emotional intelligence. Like a manager would know, yeah, that's something you need to talk about, but now's not a good time to bring that up with Russ. He's got other stuff going on. He's got other priorities. I don't want to do that right now.
Yeah, it's a good question, Jerry. I mean, I don't have a date when AI would know that, right? When is AI going to understand Russ's, emotional state?
Right.
But I think, the way that we think about that at Quantified is you create intentional moments of learning, right? So Salesforce as an organization has the 2-2-2 thing where, every quarter they intentionally set the first 2 weeks to be training and feedback moments. And that's an intentional thing they do to create moments of sort of people's readiness. So Russ, you may not be in a great emotional state at the end of the quarter, but at the beginning of the quarter, that every quarter we're going to set aside some time in the first 2 weeks to give you training. And so you kind of get ahead of that, Jerry. So it's less about, okay, what's the right moment to give Russ feedback, and more about Russ is aware that coming up at the beginning of the quarter is going to be his time to receive some coaching and feedback to get better. So you can create some systems and processes around it, which is sort of a proxy for the fact that AI doesn't perfectly understand Russ's emotional state.
And that may be the biggest challenge AI will ever face, because I am one complex person, as are we all.
You are an enigma.
What's that?
You are an enigma.
Wrapped in a riddle, as they say. I want to thank you both for your thoughts and comments today. This has been a great conversation. I do want to leave us with one more comment that came in via the chat, and this is less a question, more a comment, but I thought it was interesting, so I wanted to share it. Hot take. I think it should be an enablement business plan instead of a charter, but anything is better than nothing. And I like that comment and I don't like that comment. What I don't like about it is I feel like it tries to go up to the top of the pyramid if we're not careful and say, I'm creating win rates and therefore here are the dollars I'm delivering back to the organization, which may be true and also may not be believed. But I also like the sense of it as a business plan in that we're making sure that we put that our charter has a clear business context and justification. So I don't know if either of you have a response to that, but that was just my gut response when I saw that comment come in.
I mean, I have a hunch that the difference might be semantic, because it's not like you're going to include a profit and loss statement in your business plan, this business plan for Enablement. So I don't know exactly what things would be included that aren't in a charter. I imagine in charter, you do want to talk about, here are the things we do, and if we're successful, here are the results we expect. And I'm speculating that what this person might be saying about a business plan, but I'm not sure.
Good thought.
Yeah, Russ, 73% of enablement people, the number one metric they're evaluated on is win-loss rate, right? So, the number one metric of success for enablement is win-loss rate. I think all of us could acknowledge that enablement does not have perfect control over that. And to claim perfect control over that wouldn't be fair. And so I love what Jerry's talking about with the leading indicators of behavior change, the things that could potentially impact that are believable. Putting that into a business plan or a charter, I kind of agree with you, Jerry. I don't know if what the right term is, but having a shared agreement that I want to impact win-loss rate, but I believe the things that I can demonstrate and prove are going to be around practice, around behavior change, around coaching moments, and that is what I will deliver in order to create the strategic outcomes that you care about. And that alignment conversation, whether that happens in a plan or a charter, I don't know what the name on the cover needs to be.
So that 73% number, you can't. I believe that it exists somewhere in some report or study somewhere, but my BS meter goes up big time on that. I have a hard time believing that high percent of enablement teams are held accountable, or it's even on their charter to improve win rates. I mean, in my experience, the things that what our enablement teams are measured on are butts and seats and percent of people who liked the training. I'd be very surprised if any significant number really had as part of their model that they're accountable for win rates.
Yeah, I should clarify, Jerry. I mean sales rep performance. So the metric, the 73. If you ask how do you define a sales rep's performance, 73% of the definition is win-loss rates. Now, should enablement claim sales rep performance is sort of the fundamental question we're all grappling with today.
Right.
So I'm sorry for jumping to that that further step of proof.
Gotcha.
Good stuff. Well, I've enjoyed hearing from both of you. I think this has been a phenomenally insightful conversation from my perspective. Jerry, I'd like to thank you for sharing your insights and being generous with your time. And Noah, I'd like to say the same to you. Thank you both very much. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar in a day or so. So you can stay tuned for that. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to, of course, Quantified. You can reach us at Quantified.ai. And of course, Jerry, the best place to reach Jerry, if you're in need of some enablement firepower, best place to reach him is LinkedIn, which is kind of his second